This conference will now be recorded.
As you heard, the conference will be recorded for other participants to review later on. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague Govert Gijsbers, who will give us a lecture on Digital Innovation Hub governance. During the presentation, I'd like you to mute. If there's any questions, please use the chat. I will monitor that and try to interrupt Govert when needed. At certain points during the presentation, I would like to invite you to use Mentimeter. When that's relevant, I will interrupt Govert and ask you to switch to a web browser. I wish us all a very informative meeting. Govert, please take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I'm very glad that we have so many participants. Can you all hear me loud and clear? Let me check that first.
All good here.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, great.
Yeah. Good. As I said, very glad so many people have joined for this topic. Let me see. Well, you see, we will be talking as part of work package 4 this afternoon. We will be talking about some governance issues. There will be some questions to the public. There will also be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. So let me now start with the first slide. And let me see how I get this moving. Yes, just a click. Frank, you'll have to say there's something wrong with the numbering of the slide, so you'll have to remind me when you want me to stop after the slide 9, so you can do that. What am I going to present this afternoon? First, a few slides about governance concepts. There's always a lot of discussion on that. Why is it important that we discuss governance for digital innovation hubs and for SmartAgriHubs? What are some of the key governance issues that digital innovation hubs have to deal with? An example from the Netherlands, and I hope that Marga is participating, and some questions and both ways, I think. Governance has been described as a term that is widely used but seldom defined. It's a bit of a loose term, so to speak. It's often defined in something like the rules of the game, in parentheses. It's about the rules that prescribe who should make decisions, be responsible for execution of programs, and for the conduct of a partnership or organization, and how that conduct should be exercised. That's rather formal, but that gives you an idea. But it's generally speaking, it's about rules, and those rules they can emerge, they can come up in different ways, and they may be set top down, a priori by a government or by a company even, or they may sort of emerge in a more bottom up and informal and consultative manner. So that implies that you have both hard rules and soft rules. So you have laws, and you have the hard rules are sort of codes and legal regulations and protocols, everything that's been codified, so to speak. And you have soft rules that are more of norms and practices, more generally things like the way we do things here. That's also part of the governance of an organization, and that also reflects that you have these formal rules can both come from public or from private corporate law. I don't want to elaborate a lot more about the theory and about the concepts, because we can spend hours on that. But let's move. Why is it important to? Why is governance important for digital innovation hubs? Well, for a number of reasons. First of all, hubs address societal challenges, so they they act as public-private partnerships for innovation. So that means that a lot of organizations are involved and setting up a digital innovation hub is usually a rather complex affair. It's because digital innovation hubs are, as we call them, multi-stakeholder organizations or networks. It's important that sort of the basic rules for behavior, the rules for decision making, the organizational responsibilities, etc., that they are well described. And it's more difficult to do that for a multi-stakeholder organization such as a digital innovation hubs than it is for a single organization such as a company or a foundation. It's also important. You can see, well, there's the complexity of the digital innovation hubs makes it important that we pay attention to these governance questions. And you know, most of you will have seen this the blob, as we call it, the figure with the digital innovation hubs consisting of a number of composing elements, so to speak, competence centers in charge of R&D, companies or industry organizations, extension agencies, cooperatives maybe in the agricultural sector, government organizations, educational institutions to ensure transfer of skills and building up of skills. So overall, there is a digital innovation hubs have a sort of a core group, a core consortium, so to speak, and a much broader network. So it's a rather complex setup. And especially for agri-hubs and for smart agri-hubs, what is interesting is that in agriculture we have a very long tradition of working together in stakeholder partnerships that we can actually build on. You know, there are cooperatives in many countries, water management associations, for example, for irrigation or for drainage. There's organizations that deal with land rights, etc. And also we see that smart agri-hubs, they address societal issues, big challenges, societal challenges, food security, sustainability, climate change. So it's important that we organize that well. And of course, smart agri-hubs address complex agricultural innovation issues, and they aim to cover a large part of what we call the innovation chain, from low to high level TRL, so from more fundamental to more applied types of research and innovation. Smart agri-hubs are public-private partnerships in many cases, and they're often networks, which poses specific governance questions. And we have to deal, in many cases, with multi-level types of issues. So we have local issues, we have regional, national, even international issues, where we, for example, in the case of the Smart Agri-Hubs project, we deal with technology transfer, technology development across borders and across countries. And of course, there's a wide range of different agri-ecosystems involved. So all of these complexities make it important that we pay attention to these governance issues. It's very important that in such a network of different types of partners, that we start thinking about sharing both the risks and the benefits. So we have to find ways of sharing risks and benefits. Otherwise, the digital innovation hub, the Smart Agri-Hub, will not work. So for public and private stakeholders that have different interests, and we need to ensure that we align the risks for all of these participants. So we need to identify different risks, and we have to make sure that different participants in the agricultural innovation hub deal with these risks. And we have different types of risks, you know, technological risks, things that we develop, technology that we develop may not work. There's business model risks. There may not be a viable business model for this technology or for this solution. And there's a financial risk, of course. The business model looks good, but it's too expensive, or there are other problems. Risk management strategies need to be developed as part of the governance. In many cases, what we see is there's a public and a private element, and we need to ensure that there's public support for the public element, because the private part is the private elements of the innovation hub work can often be covered by cost recovery or by more commercial type of services, but the basic funding, which is sort of public, needs to be ensured. Okay, to go a bit more into detail about what governance is all about and the governance issues, I've clustered them in what I've called 3 governance dimensions for digital innovation hubs. And the governance must make sure that all of these 3 dimensions are both aligned and consistent. So one set of governance issues deals basically with the policies and the strategies, and it asks the fundamental question: why are we as a digital innovation hubs? Why are we on Earth? Why are we here? What's our purpose? Important, because if you don't have that right, then there's no raison d'être. There's no reason to be there. Second, and then on the bottom right, there's more like the internal governance issues, and that has to deal with the sort of the legal issues, the organization and management issues. So how is the digital innovation hub organized? How is it steered? Who's giving orders to whom? Who's taking the decisions, etc. So that's sort of, you can call that the internal governance aspects. And then third, bottom left at the figure, there is more the external part, external component, which is important for Digital Innovation Hub, as there are many stakeholders, and it's important that we that the Digital Innovation Hubs is accountable to those stakeholders, and that we actually account for the funds that we are using in the part, that we are accountable for the results that we achieve. So I will go into a bit more detail into each of these 3 dimensions. Let me see. Okay, the policies and strategies part. So that's the top orange circle there. Purpose and goals of the Digital Innovation Hub. We need agreement on that. Multiple partners means that they have multiple goals, and they're participating in the Digital Innovation Hub for different reasons, and we need to align those reasons. We have to ensure that that possible conflicts do not emerge, and that you create a sound basis for different types of parties to work together. It's also the link to the policies and the strategies, is the link to addressing the societal challenges. For example, dealing with complex issues such as climate change. Another challenge for the hub is, of course, to realize and to create economic opportunities and develop new business models for hubs to build on smart specialization, to exploit the advantages of a certain region that they are based in. We also need to make technology choices about the types of technologies that we're focusing on. Are we, focusing just on, say, robotics for horticulture, or are we a much broader digital innovation hub focusing on many aspects of agriculture? And do we address more fundamental or more applied work? I think we see most of the digital innovation hubs are working on sort of level TRL level 5 to 7. And we need to think about the basic capacities and skills, you know, to ensure that the digital innovation hub remains effective in the long run. We need to make sure that we do community building, alliance and network management, that we understand technologies and that we can assess technologies, and we have the appropriate business development skills. So that's the first one. I don't know, Frank, when did you want to pose your question? Is that
after the next slide?
After the next one. Okay, after the next 2 slides then. That's let's talk now then about the bottom right circle here. 2 slides on that: the legal, the decision making, and the organization and management issues. So governance, and then it's often talk of referred to as a concept called corporate governance. That's what this is sort of similar to. The legal form of the Digital Innovation Hub. The Digital Innovation Hub may start as a sort of an informal consortium based on a memorandum of understanding, but it could evolve into a foundation or a public or a private company, or other types. So that very much depends on the country and on the possibilities there. Has to do with national laws and regulations. Some countries, for example, have not-for-profit types of companies, others don't. And there's a lot of it's interesting to look at this over time, because it's often advisable sort of to start small and to develop the governance system as needed over time. We have some legal issues also that we have to deal with. It's taxes and liabilities. You know, sometimes organizations need to pay taxes. Sometimes they can be tax exempt. Ownership of IPR is very important because of the you have multiple organizations, and who's the owner of the IPR? If the hub is not a legal personality, it's got to be one of the founding partners. And similar, data ownership and management is an issue. And I think Christina told me that there will be a future webinar on the issues of data ownership and ethics, if I'm not mistaken. So that topic will be addressed in the near future. And then, of course, it's about governance structure and mechanisms, what we call. It's about the basic decision making. It's the day-to-day management of the hub. There may be a management board, a supervisory board, or a steering group or a steering committee, and there may be a technical advisory group. That all very much depends on the practices in the country and what is needed for your specific digital innovation hub. That was the first slide on this one, and the second slide continues here. Then there are next to the decision-making responsibilities, there are organizational issues. How are we going to organize the hub in units, departments, teams, fixed or flexible? We have to make sure that there's transparency in decision making, and we have to agree on financial contributions of the different partners for the different types of activities. In addition, what we've come across in a number of digital innovation hubs is an issue related to personnel, which is that many oftentimes staff are seconded to the digital innovation hub, but they still belong to their original parent organization. So that means that you have staff from different types of organizations working together with different rules and regulations, and maybe salary scales and whatever. So that's something that needs to be well, you can probably not address this. It's something that you have to deal with. And then there is, of course, the question of alliance management, which I've already mentioned. digital innovation hubs are multi-partner organizations, and these partners have both, conflict and sometimes different interests, and everything needs to be aligned so that the digital innovation hubs advances in a productive and effective manner. And it has to do with centralized or decentralized decision making as well. And finally, the last point on this, the location is sometimes an issue. Most cases, the digital innovation hub has a physical location in a region. That's also the original idea of the European Commission, which started this discussion, that it'll be a one-stop shop in a region, serving the needs of companies, SMEs mainly, in a region. But it can also be increasingly that there are virtual elements to it, and that's important. Frank.
Yes, thank you for reminding that. We have one question from Peter Paré, and that's: entrepreneurs are naturally working with regular adaptation of goals. So how to fix goals for entrepreneurial DIHs? Do you have any view on that?
Yeah, I think that there's this you need to strike a balance between between strategies and sort of longer term objectives, and the flexibility that is needed to deal with unexpected events, or with new market opportunities, or as we are facing now with the Corona crisis. So I think striking a balance there between sort of overall long-term goals and objectives, and the flexibility to respond to emerging challenges, that's an important one.
Yeah, so multi-actor decision making affects the agility of a digital innovation hub.
It could well be, yeah.
Yeah. Govert, can you allow me to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's nice. Share. All right. I have a question for the audience, and that is to visit menti.com and using code 223657.
On your phone, huh?
Any browser would do. Some answers coming in. So it's interesting to see that we have all type of legal arrangements with, as expected, some prevalence for the consortium agreement. I am curious to hear a little bit about the other types, if the participant is willing to reveal him or herself and explain what other means. That would be of our interest.
Hi, Ken. This is Marga.
Go ahead.
I mentioned others, so if you want me to speak up.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Well, my name is Marga, and our cluster is a SmartAgriHub, And this cluster is more or less formal in the way that we have some members, governmental members like the province and municipalities, and like knowledge institutes, they don't have to pay to be a member, and some larger companies, but we work for everyone within the cluster. So within our sector in our region, which is the sector of horticulture in the region of the south of South Holland. And well, therefore, it's very informal, this partnership, but there is a sort of leading, you could say. I work more or less for this cluster, but it's very difficult because within our digital innovation hub, all the partners do their own activities, organize their own activities. And what we would like, and there is a lot of activities already, and there was also a lot of ecosystem building already. But what we would like to do is to have more coordination on that. And this is quite a thing, you say, to organize that, because, well, also not real members of our cluster have their large activities. And there is not
very much like a network, huh?
Problem. It's more like a network. Yes, certainly. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Good to hear.
Thank you, Marga. This is insightful. I can understand how this comes about and why it comes about, but also the complexities that it brings about, indeed. All right, I am closing the voting on this one, and would like to give the word back to Govert.
Yep. Let's see if we get back to the how I go back to. I see the list of participants here. How do yes? I made a presenter.
You should be a presenter now.
Yes, I am. Okay. Yes, I hope you can see my screen again, the presentation, the PowerPoint.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Then let me then move to the third angle of governance, this external stakeholder accountability set of issues. Okay, again, sort of repeating myself, I think here different roles, responsibilities, and interests. An very important issue is how do we involve industry, SMEs, and in our case farmers. Digital innovation hubs can be, private sector, industry driven, but not industry owned. SMEs are, for the Commission and for us and farmers, are the key stakeholders, beneficiaries. Financial contributions and cost recovery are an issue. Do we ask the beneficiaries and the participants, the farmers and the SMEs, are we asking them to pay, or do we provide services for free? Do we have, for example, do we use a membership model? Some digital innovations hub do, and they then sometimes they have different types of members, different classes of membership, with different contributions and different financial contributions also, but also with different rights and responsibilities. So that's an issue that you may have to think about, whether you want to go into the direction of a membership model. And an issue is, of course, here the involvement of R&D organizations and universities. They're sometimes the starting point of the digital innovation hubs. They can be coordinators of the hub. They also play the role of competence centers with specific technical capabilities, and they may also, in addition, provide research infrastructure, labs, and field stations for experiments. So again, here you need to think about the different roles and responsibilities of these stakeholders. And next to that, many digital innovation hubs also involve education and training institutes, vocational training often, and we need to distinguish the skills development for the digital innovation hub itself, how you build up a capable set of people to help the SMEs, and you need to think about what new skills farmers and SME personnel are needing, and how vocational schools and training institutions can be involved. And a specific issue that has been raised in other hubs is the issue of that many sectors, also in agriculture, we deal with an aging workforce, and that is really a challenge, to get how to attract young people, how to make sure that older people can continue to do their work. So involvement of education and training that's another important stakeholder group. And finally, the involvement of governments, different types of government, different levels of governance. The initiator, governance can also be the initiator, the starting point of the digital innovation hubs. An important role is for them to provide the core funding, the basic funding for the public functions that where cost recovery is difficult. Of course, we also see often that we have different governance departments with different stakes and different ideas and different objectives about what the digital innovation hub should do. That also needs to be aligned, and we need to deal with governance at different levels. And I have a few slides on that next. But I think, Frank, you had another question also to pose. Huh?
Yes, indeed. So I saw some people already went there. If you can go to menti.com, code 223657, and we're asking you, how strong would you relate your relation of your digital innovation hub with these actor types? So of course, what we will see is an average. So I'm curious how that average looks like.
Of course, strongly agrees means strong, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I should have phrased that a little bit better. Thank you for correcting me. All right, this is an interesting profile.
Yeah.
If there's anyone willing to comment on the rating of the other dimension, I would be interested to hear that.
So, Dolores Ordóñez, we represented the Digital Innovation Hub of the Balearic Islands. So our Digital Innovation Hub is on agricultural and also on tourism, since tourism is the main activity of our islands, and it's aligned with the Smart Specialization strategy. So we put together both sectors.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you have multiple purposes or multiple domains, then there would be a whole new ecosystem which you have to align to. All right. Thank you. Back
Nice.
to you,
We have
Govert.
almost 40 votes here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. That was we covered this one. Oh yes, I was going to talk about the multi-level governance, and of course, in sort of 5 years ago, when we first started to talk about digital innovation hubs, we're basically thinking, well, there's one digital innovation hub per region, and that's it. But at the moment, you know, this has really evolved over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, and we now see sometimes we see different digital innovation hubs in regions. Sometimes, you know, there's one in agriculture and one in manufacturing in the same region. You know, is there some cooperation possible in for example in skills development? You know, issues like IPR, can they be dealt with between different types of digital innovation hubs? So we sometimes see sort of regional digital innovation hub networks emerging. In some countries, smaller countries, we see things taking place at the national level, and the European Commission is, of course, strongly promoting this idea of cross-border digital innovation hubs networks. And in the new Horizon Europe project, there will be a program on European digital innovation hubs, which with the explicit goal of promoting, encouraging cross-border cooperation between hubs. So this has become over the last 4 or 5 years, this has become quite a complicated, complex landscape. And what you see here, and this little picture is, of course, from one of our manufacturing project with the factories here at the bottom. So I didn't have time to change those to farmers' fields and experiment stations. But you will understand here that we sort of the gray level at the bottom, we have the local level where the regional action is sort of taking place. We may have regional networks, national platforms, international organizations like innovation actions such as SmartAgriHubs, support actions, but also bilateral collaborations between organizations. So that makes it a lot more complicated. And all I want to say at this point, it depends on the whether you have or whether you need a national platform. Depends on a number of issues. Depends on the size of the country. Depends on how it's all set up. So that, you know, it adds to the complexity. And here, if I may ask, you already heard a short intervention by Marga. As an example, we have from the Netherlands an example of one of the smart agri-hubs that has sort of set itself up as a network with a bunch of partners and organizations involved. Marga, may I ask you to tell us a little bit about the Greenport Horticulture Hub and how it's set up and how you deal with these issues?
Yes, thank you, Govert. I will try, because I made this for our own, well, get more well known who we are, what we are. But of course, it's in Dutch. But some of you will recognize some of the mentioned names, like, for example, if you see at the right up, I followed the other competence centers, for example, and those are, of course, the Technical University of Delft, and you are TNO, because you are in our region and we do a lot of work with you together. And the Wageningen University, the Bleiswijk a part of Wageningen University, which is really dedicated to horticulture. So those are the competence centers. we say that our Horti campus has at this moment three physical places where we really do our activities. We have our activities. Those are the campus in Westland, the campus in Bleiswijk, where the Wageningen University is situated, and the campus in Delft, where the university and the applied universities are situated. So it's all about a cluster. It's all about a network. A lot of people do not know really at this moment that they are partner in a SmartAgriHub. That's one of the activities I'm busy with, to tell them that they are, and that I would like to coordinate all the activities we are doing. Like, well, we should have tomorrow and Friday a big meeting about robo-crops, for example, in the campus Westland. Of course, it's not organized now. It will be in autumn. But this was a large activity which was done by the campus organization and the University of Delft and Innovation Quarter, which you see somewhere else. Yes, because they are investors and they are active on support on startups and scale-ups. So already a lot of activities are done by groups together in our cluster. So the ecosystem is working very well. But the people do not know that we are a SmartAgriHub, and if they know, we can maybe strengthen the ecosystem a little bit more. So that's why I try to make this figure in the way as we are organized. And so you see investors like Innovation Quarter and banks, and you see other digital innovation hubs like Robo Valley, who will also be active in this RoboCrops meeting, so already active with us. You see the large companies, which are just a few of them, of course. And also advisories who are already active in this field. Berenschot, for example, which is a large consultancy and advice organization. They are active because they saw some years ago that digitalization of horticulture will become very important. So that's what's happening in our campus. We are not well organized for a lot of things yet, but I think the ecosystem is quite good organized. So I tried just to make this figure, and I would say to everyone, it will help you if you do it yourself. Thank you.
Marga,
very nice.
Thank you very much, Marga. Very interesting. We have a question from Maryline. And the question is, what are the perspectives of this hub with COVID-19?
Oh, well, as you hear, a lot of our meetings are postponed, and our sector, our cluster, the sector has a lot of problems with the cluster with COVID-19. We are the horticulture sector, the greenhouse cluster of the Netherlands, and the largest, and we have a lot of problems because all our employees coming from the eastern part of Europe went home. That's one of our problems. The other problem is that we cannot sell our products anymore. We can sell some vegetables. That's possible, but flowers and ornamental plants, for example, is really a problem. So it's quite difficult now, I think, to make the farmers, the growers, we call them growers, to make them interested in our activities. But I'm sure that although we will have a big financial crisis, that they will become interested again. And we have activities some of them are very low, just like make them aware about digital security. One of the problems we have just that they leave open their computer office, for example, and someone can get in. So that's the very simple awareness. And the other thing is be aware how important digitalization is already and will be in the future. So that's for the farmers who are not very active at all on this side, but a lot of them are already. And for example, a lot of greenhouses are very much automatically and will become more and more. So I'm sure that although we have real problems, that this hub will go on, not as fast as we would like, but we will stay. I'm certain. Thank you.
I also have a question, Marga, because you in your earlier contribution you mentioned that this whole complex setup that we're seeing on the screen is sort of, let's say, managed as a rather open, informal network. Is that to you? Is that the most ideal situation, or are you looking to develop this into something more formal? Say a foundation or whatever, a company or a...
Well, we are a part of the Greenport West Holland, which is a formal organization, even by law in the Netherlands. Okay. Yeah. So, so this is my formal background, but the activities of this organization are mostly really informal. But for example, if we have a discussion with the government, with the national government on activities like energy, then our Greenport is the organization who will be contacted. So in future on digitizing, it will be the same, and we get some questions from the governments who do not know yet that we are a Smart Agri Hub. I will tell them tomorrow in a discussion, but we got some questions already. What would you like to do on digitizing? We have, for example, programs. Are you willing to be active? Of course we are willing to be active. So a part of us is really formal. And the activities with the knowledge centers are really well organized with the universities, etc. But not everyone is a member, so but we try to reach all the growers, of course, to come, and they are all welcome. And most of our activities are without payment, so they are free of fees. So it's difficult because we are not well known. But I started, for example, to make a logo for our Smart Agri Hub, which is the same logo as from our Greenport for the Greenport, but then with a digitalization text within it. So yeah, try to make it more well known, but that's quite difficult because our Greenport is in some cases very informal, and in some cases very formal. It's very difficult to tell, but that's how it's organized in the Netherlands.
Oh, thank you very much, Marga. It was, I think, a very interesting contribution, and it shows that you know some of the complexities of actually setting up and managing quite an advanced and quite a complex group of stakeholders, as we see here on the screen. I think I have a couple more slides. No, I just wrapping up here, I think, with some of the conclusions. Well, as we've discussed, different dimensions. The best governance model for your digital innovation hub would depend on a large number of factors. That has to do with national legislation, regional characteristics, agroecological zones, experiences with public-private partnerships, capabilities, priorities, etc. So country-specific, region-specific, and hub-specific. We have to make sure that both these formal, legal, and informal elements that how do we actually work together and how do we create a common culture in our hub are addressed well and are recognized as being important to make sure that everything works together in an alliance. And perhaps I think it's important to start small, maybe as a consortium, and if needed, if necessary, formalize those arrangements. Well, we have already addressed some of the questions here. Do you, Frank, did you have any other questions? I think so. Huh?
Indeed, if you can share. Yep.
Yeah.
So in the previous question, I asked you to indicate the current legal arrangement, and now I'm asking you about the ideal legal arrangement. We have one or two more slides.
Lots of people are scoring. Voting, okay.
Based on a partial set of the responses, there seems to be a preference for consortium agreements and foundation type of organization.
Yeah.
Whereas in the previous results, it was much more, well, kind of equally spread.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
Keep voting.
Yeah. I'm curious. Well, I have a tendency to look to deviations from the normal, but so there was at least one person indicating to prefer none as a legal arrangement for the Digital Innovation Hub. Does this person want to come forward and explain why? That's a duck. Okay, I guess that we
let's move on.
That's good. Yes. Okay. The question is, do you see a membership model as feasible or desirable for your Digital Innovation Hub? 3 response types. There is some agreement. That's interesting. While others are voting, do people who voted for no care to explain? I'm interested to learn your rationale on that. Maybe people who don't know what are the questions about membership models. Anyone want to explain about the choice for don't know or no?
Or no?
Well, then I thank you for your responses. This is an open question. What do you see as the most critical governance issue for your Digital Innovation Hub?
Maybe in the meantime, I saw one question from the chat on which maybe Howard can reply while we are voting here. Yes. Yeah. So one of the questions for the membership model was who would be the members, Howard. So our cluster members are already members of the cluster and other initiatives. So who would be the members of the Digital Innovation Hub?
Okay, I think there's there are a number of different possibilities. I think what you often see is a sort of a core consortium that would be members, but you can have individual farmers, companies, or local producer associations as members as well. And in some Digital Innovation Hub, they have sort of set up a system with different classes of members, whereas sort of class 1 members, they pay a fairly high contribution, but they then also can be part, for example, of the board and determine some of the priorities for research and technology development. And for example, for individual farmers or for small companies, for SMEs, there is a possibility to join as a sort of a class 2 or 3 member, where they have to make very little financial contributions. They also have fewer rights, but they still benefit from being a member and from receiving support on the technologies. So I think in principle we should then aim for a membership that is as broadly based as possible, with some members, as the saying went in Animal Farm, some members being more equal than others, probably. So different rights and responsibilities, I think, for different types of members, but casting that as widely as possible. Are there any other questions?
I should unmute before talking. Yeah, while showing my screen, I haven't been able to follow the chat, and it's almost 3 o'clock. So I'll suggest to move on a bit.
Okay.
Thank you for responding.
We're getting a lot of responses in on the critical governance issues, which is nice. Yes.
Definitely, we'll cluster these and put them on a report in the portal, because it's very valuable to us. All right. We have some. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Just before you close, I'm Paola Boscro from the Italian Institute of Technology, and I'm involved together with Andrea Pagnin, that is also connected. We are both working on a DIHs project. So at the moment, we are working on the definition of the business model for this pan-European network. And as a quick question, I was going to ask you whether you thought about effort exchange systems to regulate the relationships partnerships between different digital innovation hubs. So not only in terms of how to govern and how to design the governance mechanism of one digital innovation hub, but how to regulate the governance of several at the same time. Have you ever thought about these like pan-European mechanisms?
Yes,
yes.
Yeah. Go
Yes.
ahead, Frank.
We have been discussing this in several contexts, also within the scope of SmartAgriHubs. But it's not a minor topic, so I propose to get in touch on that offline. And let me see if what was your name again?
I can type on the chat. It's Paola Boscolo, and my email.
Okay, yeah, if you can type that in the chat, then I can retrieve that.
Yeah, because we're working on a number of pan-European projects that are.
I'd like to briefly highlight.
Yeah, and the following one is the one of my colleague.
Yeah. All right. We have some upcoming webinars. In May, it's the data sharing in agriculture and the code of conduct webinar scheduled. For June, we have a webinar on strategy for digital innovation hubs. In July, we have one on ecosystem and needs assessment. We did that already today a little bit, an introduction to that. September, probably late September, introduction to the maturity tool for the digital innovation hubs, which we're currently implementing and launching soon. October, we have the farmer-centric innovation, which is an outcome of one of the previous webinars. And November, business models for digital innovation hubs, and closing of the year with peer review mechanism in
You still there, Frank?
I suppose Frank is gone.
I think we've lost Frank. We don't hear Frank anymore.
What's going on? Oh,
I don't know. Okay.
Check the shared screen.
I think there are some problems. Shall we close the session by thanking all of you very much for participation, and extending the invitation to you that if you have any specific questions, follow up, would like to discuss things, that suggest you to either email me or Frank or Christina, and we will try to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for the webinar. And we are looking forward to get the slides.
Yes, of course.
We will share the slides and the recording with you, and update you on the upcoming webinars as well. Thank you very much for the participation.
Okay. Thank you.
Suggest to include the chat information in the mail that we get afterwards. Thank you very much.
Could you just repeat? Suggest to include what information? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
There is some interesting information in the chat.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah.
Just
we would extract all the messages.
Put that in the mail. That would be interesting. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Great job.
Nice afternoon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Bye.